Tom, how you doing, man? What's your name? I like.
You're such a pro.
I was thinking like Big Tom would be cool.
Ugh, this show's gonna be
Big
fun.
Tom.
What was your name?
I
Is
never
this like
had a DJ name because I play instruments.
yeah? How are you, mate? What's going on in
I have no idea because I've been in my house.
such a boring answer.
Yeah, man, it's like kind of sad, but I would say this year I've probably been outside the least of any year in my entire life.
What do you mean you've been outside the least? Like, what does that even mean?
Like going outside and doing things in the like during the summer. I didn't really go to the pool. I've not been playing golf lately, like nothing like that. I guess
I love
this
that. I
weekend.
love those are the things that like for you happen outside, but those things are also very boring.
All right, welcome to the build. So it's moving quickly.
And their product velocity is intense. We're both pretty involved in the LangChain community.
This is going to be an industry, like the whole thing is going to explode.
The hype cycle, it's like just because you hear everybody start talking about these things doesn't necessarily mean it's the right.
Need to go back, find out more because it's really interesting.
We're both obsessed with AI, and their entire stack is just pivoted to agents.
The next question that usually comes after that is like, well, I'm fine-tuning an open model.
That's the biggest thing with the latest specs.
It's an exploding distribution vector.
I'm really excited. I think everybody is. I'm not the only one.
The build.
Well, let's get into more exciting stuff. So let's chat about AI. You are going to laugh at me because all of the things I told you I would prepare for this show, I haven't prepared. So let's talk through OpenAI's extravaganza of dev stuff, some of which is underwhelming, some of which is cool. I've got a bit of that to show. And you're going to do Cloudflare's MCP API. MCP as an API code thing, right?
Yeah, they're calling it Code Mode.
Code Mode. All right, sweet. Yeah, is there anything else you saw that was caught your eye?
I don't think so. Because the OpenAI had a lot that they announced at Dev Day, and to be honest, I haven't even had time to dive into all of it. I think I'm still a little bit unclear on a lot of it.
Yeah, I'm going to talk through that and get your sense of it. And then I've got a little bit of stuff on the LangChain middleware demo I'm building. But I will show you the first chunk and then have a chat about it and then maybe defer to the next week for the implementation because, I haven't finished it. But I've got a bit to talk to you about on that basis because, it'll be interesting to see what these guys do in response or what everyone does in response to OpenAI. So let's talk about OpenAI first. So they had the dev day, right? Everyone would have seen it. And they released a range of different things and they talked, about their usage, all of that sort of stuff. We covered their usage when they released their research report. So they've got like 800 million active users. Can't remember the definition. I think that's basic. That's daily or weekly. I believe it's daily. Daily active users, 800 million, right? And of that average daily messages sent is at about 2.4, 2.5 billion at the moment, of which about 25 to 30% is work related. So they talk through a bit of that and they're just like uptrend. But in context, I think they said they processed like 1 trillion tokens, something like that, like a trillion point. In context, right? Remember when Google had their big like Google I/O conference and they talked about AI mode and a bunch of other stuff that was coming down. They said that they're at like the 50 trillion token mark now annually. So it gives you a sense of scale in terms of like Google, what they're actually executing on. Like Google's so quiet. Like they don't do the PR very well, probably because they don't have to, because they're Google and they own the category.
Probably because it would be a train wreck gathering everybody to figure out what products,
what to talk about.
What do you call them? Where are they at? That's what.
Well, I guess they just wheel out Demis Hassabis now and they're like, hey, how many more Nobel Prizes have you won since Sam Altman released a couple of features? It's probably what they would say, which is it's a bit of a boss move. Yeah. So let's pull up what they talked through, and then I want to go through a couple of demos of the stuff that OpenAI have released. What were your initial thoughts while I'm doing that?
My initial thoughts were, while I was watching the live stream, it's like, okay, it's obviously it's dev day, so I guess geared at devs, but a lot of the stuff in the apps and agents is more like no code type of tools. And, for me, it's not very appealing. I'd rather just write the code, which I guess you can with the SDKs. So I just need to dive into it more. But that was my first thought. I was just a little bit confused on what's the audience, what are the use cases, what are the downfalls? Like, it kind of seems like vibe coding a little bit, I guess, a lot like similar to a lot of the other things we've looked at lately.
Yeah, so you're talking about the agents stuff, right?
Yeah, the agents, and then they also have like a widget builder for the apps or maybe that's part of the agents. And it's kind of like vibe coding a MCP, I guess. I touched on it very lightly. Anyways, what about yourself?
Some of it I was impressed by and have been using more. I guess some of it was just a bit ho-hum, I guess. Like I wasn't that impressed. Or like, it's sort of like them catching up. So I've got a few thoughts on that. Well, catching up is the wrong term, but I've got a few thoughts on it. But what I want to do is actually just pull up a couple of these different things. So Dev Day announcements, where is it? Yeah, they put a bunch of this stuff out. So a couple of things here that I wanted to touch on. So they released Sora into the API. So Sora 2, into the API. So you can use that. They also made GPT-5 Pro, so the high-end model, generally available in the API as well. Then they released a whole bunch of stuff on agent. So yeah, here we go. This is probably
on
better.
GPT-5 Pro, I could have just not been paying attention, I guess, but I have it in my ChatGPT app now. And do you know, was that new as of the other day? Because I heard the API announcement.
So GPT-5 Pro, which is here, so reset, like I'll just zoom in. So this is the chat app, right? Is Pro here, and you can get access to it on the business plan.
See, and that's what I have.
Yeah, cool.
Or business or teams.
So I think it's been available like that, but now it's available in the API. I did a bit of a test I can talk you through, and it wasn't like, I don't know, I tried to use it, and I think you need to use it on very specific things. And I did quite a deep dive into X, just looking for people who were using it a lot. Like I was trying to figure out like, all right, who's actually using this and what are you using it for? And of the use cases I could find, there were a lot of like, research, academics, that sort of stuff. Like it's very in-depth, detailed. In the API, I couldn't enable it with any kind of tools in the playground. So it was it's very constrained, whereas I found like just regular GPT extra thinking mode was way better, way faster, and also like better responses. So I can talk you through that now if you want, but like it was quite underwhelming, to be honest.
Yeah. On ChatGPT 5 Pro, I guess maybe I feel like an idiot if this has been available the whole time, but I'm pretty sure I did not have access to Pro before. So I've done a few things like code analysis and generate PRDs and stuff. And I mean, just from the couple of tests, it's extremely detailed. And one of the apps, can't remember exactly what I was doing, but it worked flawlessly the first time when I copied and pasted a plan out of GPT.
What was the prompt? Do you remember?
Yeah, look for it. It was something related to Cloudflare. So my point, I haven't done a ton with it, but in the little I have, I was actually pretty impressed.
So here is the model, the default GPT-5. So regular GPT-5 is $10, million tokens in the output. And this one, nope. The GPT-5 Pro is very, very expensive for what it is.
What was it? It was like $100.
It's $120 per million output tokens, and it's very slow, like really, really slow. There is a hack. There's like a flag you can pass in that I found. Maybe if I find it, I can chuck it in the show notes around like getting it to be like faster.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, so I was doing an analysis for this agent stuff I'll show you later. And I compared the exact same prompt, which was pretty in-depth. It was like, analyze a bunch of public data sets and come up with a strategy for the analysis of these data sets around like company size, companies in different categories and their suitability to and their analysis of their labor costs apportioned based on the percentage of those different industries that have ONET tasks represented within their labor budget. So it was like combining data sets. It had to go and get a bunch of data sets and like basically pull them together and justify its come up with a way to analyze that data and then justify it, right? So it was a non-trivial task. And just regular thinking mode did it way better, way faster. And then it cost me $1.20 just to put the request into the API. And it sat there for minutes and minutes and minutes, and then finally came back with like a question effectively. So I think I would be reticent to use it, but I believe it's kind of like Claude, right? You and I pay for Claude Code Max, right? And you just get it. And it's like, you can just use it and they juice it up. That's also what they do with Codex, for example. Like they just kind of give away the usage.
Mm-hmm.
So I can kind of understand that. But yeah, I don't know who would be using it in the API on that basis. Kind of like I never use Anthropic's API. It's just so expensive.
Right.
So that was that. I won't spend too much time on that. Row2 is now in the API, which is cool. I finally got an invite to the Sora app from my son. So he was like, "Oh, Dad, I got a Sora invite." I'm like, I didn't even get a Sora invite. So I played with that. That was fun. I don't know. It's unclear to me how much share that app will steal from the other platforms, but I believe it'll probably just inject itself into the other platforms in terms of the content that comes out of it.
Yeah, people are saying TikTok killer and all types of things.
Yeah, so
which
yeah.
To me initially, I'm like, well, how is that even comparable? But I guess when you use it through their UI and you can share things and socialize, I guess I could see them doing something more advanced in terms of socialization.
Here it is. Here's the card. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like, my feeling on it is like social media is so fake anyway that like doesn't really matter. Like, we watch dramas. I don't know. Like, a lot of the commentary was like, "This is crazy. Everything's slop." And I'm like, but we watch drama, right? On television. None of that is real. Like, you never look at like, I don't know, Family Guy and think, well, this isn't very realistic. They're still entertaining. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that content definitely has legs. I just don't know if a dedicated app for it is the sustainable path, but we'll see. Yeah, this is the content cards. $15 in, $120 out. And most of, I believe, the cost that I paid was actually on the $15 in mark, right? Because I was feeding it a bunch of shit and it was processing stuff. So it's, yeah, I'm keen to play with it more, but I'm unclear as to like which specific tasks I have that I could push in here. It's not like I'm not doing like really high end, scientific analysis or something. So
yeah, it looks like, so I have it in my ChatGPT app and, chat.com. Looks like it's limited to 15 requests per month. So similar to how they do the limitations on deep research, which, everyone's figuring out the best way, but that drives me nuts when like 2 days into the month, I forget that I'm limited and I had deep research selected and then I'm like out for the entire month.
Yeah. I don't know how many people actually do that. Yeah, here we go. So I played with this. So they're basically, one of the big things that people were getting excited about is the App Store, which is basically just MCP, right? As far as I could tell, it was just MCP with a couple of different nuances on top and this chat UI thing that they also released, which does look cool. And I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. Remember, they've tried to do this a couple of times, right? So they had like custom GPTs and then they had the GPT kind of environment that never really went anywhere.
Yeah.
People are saying, well, maybe now it's different because they've got the user base. And the apps that they launched were kind of cool. So I tried the HubSpot app, which is basically just a formalization of the MCP connector, which has been in there for ages. And the results of that were okay, but it didn't have much of this custom UI. But one of the ones that I got the most excited about, which is related to the web dev stuff that we were talking through, is the Figma app. Figma is, so I saw this and I was like, great, this is going to solve my problems because now I've got an action point into Figma that may be more advanced than what I could get out of the basic Figma tools. But actually, no, it's not the case. I can't do designs, but you can only do like diagramming in FigJam. So that's kind of annoying. I'm really, really disappointed in like Figma is going to lose its position if they don't do something fast. But things like Zillow was pretty cool. Like this is the area I work in. And I saw that and I was like, all right, that's a pretty cool example of like a use case, good UI, good implementation, a pretty solid execution. And it's interesting, like to see them handing over the interface to GPT when you consider like Zillow's like position is like they need to own all of the traffic. Like that's like a core part of what they need to do. Maybe it's an indication that companies like this, digital companies, are realizing that they are losing to like answer engines and they need to engage and embed their UI in these apps. That being said, Zillow's pretty forward thinking. They were one of the only apps that was released into the Apple Vision Pro app store. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty cool. We'll see where it goes. Apparently you can apply to be listed in their quote unquote app store that's going to launch soon. And then there's this apps SDK. I don't know. It's like it built on top of the model context protocol, but I haven't played with it yet. So I think it might just be very similar.
Yep. It's still on my list. I've just kind of fumbled around with the initial demos.
And what's cool about it is that it's with their agentic commerce protocol. So I don't know if you've seen in the actual ChatGPT interface, in here, they've added this orders kind of tracking area. So stuff that you buy, they actually track all of your transactions as well. So they're really trying to be the everything app. It's kind of cool. I do want to build something, but I don't work in e-commerce at the moment.
Yeah. What do you think, if it's geared towards like that app store, one-click buy type of stuff? I mean, how do you envision like what kind of products, like is the idea that I can generate an app and a workflow and all that through this agent builder, app builder, and then I can publish it and charge people to use it? Or
I don't know if there's a charging component. I also don't know if there's a take rate, like if there'll be a take rate, kind of like if you've ever built an app in the Apple App Store, it's absolutely egregious how they basically take a percentage of your revenue, right? I don't know if there'll be subscriptions to certain apps within the ChatGPT App Store. I'm assuming there would be, but they would probably want to take a cut of that. And then any kind of e-commerce transactions, I'm assuming they'll probably take a cut off as well. If you are like an emergent kind of e-commerce brand or like any kind of app builder, I can see why this would be appealing, right? Because there's now 800 million active users in here and you've got an opportunity to basically aggressively go and take some share. It's kind of like when brands started getting built on TikTok. Once TikTok really started kicking off, there was this gold rush of like aggressive kind of pursuit of eyeballs, which is the case whenever a new channel really opens up for monetization. So I wouldn't be surprised if this store or just explodes, but we'll wait and see. Like I'm not sure did you see the, is it EA, Electronic Arts?
EA Games
case against Apple and how they finally won a case against Apple to be able to take transactions off the Apple App Store?
No, I didn't see that.
It was a while back and Apple kept fighting it, and I don't know where it's at now, but it took a really big company to make it happen. I don't know if that will scare OpenAI away from a similar model or if they'll just go for it and try and take a certain percentage of total revenue. Like, so I'm not sure if you know this, but Apple's standard policies beneath $1 million in revenue, I believe it's 15% of total subscriptions. Sorry, above $1 million is 15%, below is 30%. And then they have certain concessions for certain scenarios and different things. If it's free, it's free. But if you're monetizing, then generally you need to share some of that with Apple. And they're pretty aggressive because then they can just turn off your access and then you're completely disconnected. And that was sort of like a antitrust kind of, well, not antitrust, but
yeah, okay,
anti-competitive.
I didn't realize it was all related to that, but yeah.
Yeah, so I wonder what they'll do here because they're in a new app store, right? And then would they be scared by that? Would they just want to capture everything and attack Apple by just getting as many apps in as possible and not doing that? Not sure. But anyway, let's put that to one side and see where that goes. What I do want to talk about...
I'm interested to see what they do more on the business side, because this is all seems very consumer level. But, if you're running MCP and agents within your organization, I mean, this, at least what I see so far, is definitely not going to work. So I'm very curious about, the crossover and where it makes sense for third-party external MCP gateways, registries, etc., and how that compares to OpenAI's approach.
Well, it's sort of like Android versus... And it will become kind of like Android versus Apple by the sounds of it. So they're launching apps for GPT Business, Enterprise, and EDU accounts later this year. And they're saying like submissions, developers will need to submit apps that they can publish in ChatGPT, which basically indicates that they'll have a similar process to Apple where you submit, it gets reviewed, and then it gets published to try and maintain quality, also maintain safety protocols probably, and then also like some degree of there's like a morality kind of definition in the Apple App Store that's probably going to be similar. But for the moment, anyway, they are maintaining their like if you come in here, you can see. If you come in here into the actual chat area, which has been like this for a while. The connectors, add sources, connect them up, and then
the interesting thing about these connectors,
we've still got developer mode in here where you can actually add your own in and create your own custom ones. So for the moment, we can still connect up our own MCP servers, but that may change.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to change. And the interesting thing is, while I was testing it, if I remember right, I was able to add MCP servers that didn't use this schema or like the configuration that OpenAI requires. So you may have remembered me complaining about when they rolled out GPT connectors, you have to write the code a special way that only works for OpenAI. So they'd have it integrated with like deep research or chat. So you have to create specialized tools for it to work as a GPT connector. But I was able to add other MCP servers. So to me, that's like, if I can not have to write special code and still use them, that's a huge plus compared to where I was at before with the OpenAI.
Right. I didn't realize, well, if that's something you were talking about, I wasn't paying attention.
Tom, come on.
Yeah.
I've never done that to you.
You're talking about this stuff. This schema definition here. All right. So the next thing we should probably hit on. So that is Sora 2. Yeah. So Codex got a few feature updates. I do want to talk a bit about that because I have been using Codex more and it has gotten significantly better. And they have released a couple of different things that now that I'm actually more in this kind of ecosystem across work, it's actually, I can see why they're doing what they're doing on the features here. It's still a little bit annoying because it's not quite as interactive as I want it to be, but these releases were quite cool. Then they've got this GPT real-time sort of voice model. Interestingly, their agent builder, you can't build voice agents yet, can't do voice, which is kind of annoying. So we'll pull that up in a second. And then there's this GPT image mini thing, which is a cheaper mini model. I'm not going to spend time on that. But these Codex releases, so there's a Slack integration. That's kind of cool. It's catching up. Then they've released the Codex SDK. Again, that's catching up because that's been with all the other guys for ages, right? And even Claude is like accelerating their investment into this to try and basically get people to use Claude code for other things. And then you saw like Gemini, like I think, did you say Gemini or is it Grok's like CLI SDK is kind of like the most hackable? This one is...
I've used the Grok desktop app, and then they also have a like Claude Code CLI type of tool that I've used to tweak.
I think it might be the Gemini one because the Gemini one is the one that I think the Kimi or Quen guys forked for their own version of that. So maybe they're basically saying that like anyone who wants to build like agentic coding apps needs to sort of like that's probably a good idea. And then they've released some admin tools. So that is this. I'm actually pretty impressed by, so I can talk through how I've been using it if you're interested, and I can show you some examples.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I've started using it more, but like we've said in the past, it's a different style of use.
It is a different style.
If I use it exactly the way I use Claude Code, I don't get very good results. So yeah, I'm curious, what have you found out on how to optimize and what's different about Codex?
Keep forgetting how to get into this goddamn thing. Here we go. Codex. So ChatGPT/Codex. So I was showing you that website that I was building for my partner when I was doing the Figma sort of web dev thing. So basically I've just started throwing some of that stuff at Codex. The cool thing about Codex, the whole idea is that it's available in your IDE, and then you can push up to the cloud tasks and bring them back down. So the idea is it's sort of like the ambient kind of experience of like your agent, your coding agent. And I found that pretty cool and nice to use. So I was doing that between Cursor and this. So if I open up Cursor, I can show you what that looks like. Open. Maybe I can't because it's not on this computer. Give me a second. I'll actually show you what it's like to install then. Try it in your IDE, open Cursor. Let's see if that works. Here we go. So you chuck that in here. All right. And then you get this little open Codex kind of visual thing. It actually opens on the side here over the top of your navigator in Cursor, which is kind of annoying. And you have to go through this setup to try and like pull it across. But basically you can see your recent tasks. It matches your cloud tasks. So you can see the cloud tasks running over here. So this is my cloud version. This is my Codex version. This is my Cursor version. And you can then grab those tasks or work on them locally or in the cloud, which is quite cool, right?
Yeah, particularly using from your mobile device. I've found that where like if I'm going somewhere, I'll load something up in the Codex and then I can, still run code reviews or feature requests or whatever from my phone.
I underappreciated how wonderful that feature actually is. Like, so being able to like kick off agents, review their feedback, or do anything on your mobile device. Like, actually, I wish I had that for Claude Code. Maybe they do. I don't know. Like, can you do that with Claude Code? I don't know. Or is there some other version of that? Like, you use Klein. Does Klein have like a mobile experience where you can like kick off agents and stuff?
I got to say, I haven't actually used Klein in quite a while. But what I have done with Claude Code is if you add the GitHub app and then through my GitHub mobile app, leave comments or issues. I can't remember if you can even do issues from somehow.
Yeah.
I just did a mention at Claude and it actually does work. I just can't remember exactly how I did that.
Well, I guess if you've got it integrated into, say, your chat app like Slack or something like that, then it would function in a very similar way. So maybe they just don't care because it's like, all right, well, we're just going to integrate into those apps that people use on their phone anyway. Yeah, so you can start a task here or in the cloud, right? So you can run it in the cloud and then you can choose your environment. So when you set up your environment, so this is like the website environment. These are different environments that have set up. And if you've gone through that process, you can like create the different environments you want it to work in. This is one that I kicked off yesterday. And then you can also see the code reviews in here that are related to your GitHub account. So like even that workflow I found excellent because you can just automate the sequences. And it's something I think like more forward kind of dev teams are doing this at scale all of the time, right? But I think it's probably something that's not as widely adopted as it probably should be, particularly for like simpler stuff. So this is like just a website. It's an example. It's not, not a crazy application of this, but it's sort of something that is pretty common, like front end work, updating components, whatever it is. This was the task. So funneling kind of a content plan production like process from regular GPT into a markdown file, and then requesting this like Codex, pick it up and refactor the whole website using that content plan. And yeah, I've been very impressed compared to, say, doing these kinds of tasks, which is where I started this project in Claude Code, and also using the Cursor agent, just like the interface, being able to look at the diffs, like, yeah, see the logs, the whole, like the way it works, the environment you can put it in, the fact that they just they let you just have like a completely open container now as well. Like there's no constraints. It's just like you can get access to anything anything you want, but I know it's in a containerized environment, and that's super helpful. And then, yeah, this integration, particularly with Vercel, is quite nice. So you got the Vercel bot and the agent, and then you can kick off like a code review with Codex that can then also inspect that branch via Vercel in a live preview. Like that was pretty amazing. So, and then this is an issue that's picked up just on one of the pages, right? So you can just say, yeah, gives you some advice, and it's like, all right, at Codex, I want you to fix this. Let's see if that works.
And I still need to spend some more time figuring out better ways to use like, Claude Code, Git actions, and Codex together, and like different workflows that combine the best of each. So I've done that. I do that kind of regularly, manually, but figuring out better workflows.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you use. I don't know if Cloudflare has this, but Vercel has this like deployment agent, which I quite like.
Yep.
So
Cloudflare, yeah, they have
a similar thing. So yeah, it's just like a deployment agent, because everything goes based on like branches, and then you can configure the agent that goes over the top of it. Where's my agent? Deployment agent here. Yeah, code review agent, effectively, that you can use. And you can push into it, and then on each of those accounts you've connected up, it will then just like do a production, I guess, a push review. I don't know which one is better, using Codex to resolve the issues or just offloading it to something else. I have seen comments of people that like, basically when you're using Codex, it's better just to give it like very specific developer-centric language and try and constrain it down to something that's like, a relatively small chunk of work. If it's anything larger, then you should probably use these variation features, because you can then get multiple variations and then evaluate them and combine them if you want, or you can take ideas from one, put them back in another one that you think is more on track.
That is an
I don't
awesome
really do that, but
feature, by the way. I love that.
Yeah, it is cool. And they're not really constraining this. Like, it's just like they're funneling cash into this, I guess, to try and get more share, right? So,
yeah. Have you tried using like GPT-5 Codex versus GPT-5, just chat or whatever? So like in the VS Code plugin, you can change that, and they do act differently. And again, haven't spent enough time on it to really speak on the differences. But I've noticed if I switch the model for certain things, I can tailor my results, or at least what I expect, a little bit better.
Codex is only available in GPT, right? It's not available on the API.
No, you can use it on the API. I'm pretty sure, like, you can use it off of OpenRouter, I think.
So here are the models. Oh yeah, GPT-5 Codex.
Yeah.
I haven't done a like for like comparison. Yeah. I know it was fine-tuned, right? So on OpenRouter, let's see. Actually, on OpenRouter, I wanted to talk to you about this, because I saw something on here that was very surprising. So before we talk about that, where is GPT-5 OSS? GPT-5 is not even on the top models, right? Codex. Here it is. Through OpenRouter. Oh yeah, client killer code. Yeah, that makes sense. And the Claude code of that. That's cool. No, I haven't done a like for like comparison. And to be honest, even if I did, I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference that much, like, because so many of the things you do when you're using these tools is like constant back and forth, right?
Yeah.
So I don't even know if I'd be able to.
Yeah, what my take so far is basically like with Codex, it's like you said, very like pinpointed, laser focused on kind of dev, where chat or GPT-5 chat or regular whatever, high, low, is more, you can get more like conversational out of it, I believe.
Right. Yeah, the thing I wanted to talk to you about on OpenRouter is this, that I was on here before and I noticed it, and I've never used this, but the Grok Code Fast 1 model has just emerged, right, on here, and Grok 4 Fast as well. Like, so if we check that out, like this model and the providers that are using it, like, so that's what, 1 trillion tokens through OpenRouter in a week. And most of it's through Kilocode and Klein. And I don't know, Blackbox AI, but Recode, right? And OpenCode. So like this passed me by, to be honest. So I don't know what's going on with that, but obviously, like
I'm
we know,
like-
like this community, like these guys are generally like early adopters, right? So something's happening with that.
Yeah, I'm still in denial, I guess, about Grok with a K, Elon's Grok, because we've talked about it several times where they rolled it out and it just kind of seems like a joke. I know it's super advanced. I'm not denying that, but for that reason, like I don't even consider using it because it's just not in my arsenal, you know?
I
Like
just
I don't even think
forget
about
it.
I should try Grok with a K.
I actually just forget about it, right?
Exactly.
I have used it, and when I've used it, I've been impressed. But it's just like you've only got so much space in your mind, right? Here it is. And then breaking your workflow. I don't know, like maybe I should, but something's happening with this that indicates that there are people adopting this for coding pretty aggressively. And it may just be the cost, who knows? But this is where it sits on artificial analysis. So on this meta intelligence benchmark, but it's really fast, but it's way down the pecking order, even lower than Grok 4, right? But Grok 4 compared to, that's meta. This meta benchmark isn't the best for coding, right? It's not.
Not to take us too far off course, and if you're going to cover it later, that's fine. I saw something about Grok, competitor to Sora, a new video model. Did they drop that after Sora 2? Is it actually good? Did you see that?
I didn't. The last update I saw from those guys was like the image model with spicy. I wonder if the video model, like it makes sense that he'd release something like that, but I wonder if the video model would also include a spicy mode, because if it does, then that's going to be wild. I hope it does. I hope
if it could generate anything that's allowed on Twitter, then
on X, it's like
crazy.
Yeah, anything on there, like it's going to be pretty crazy. Actually, I saw the guy. He was on Lex Friedman's podcast, and he's the guy who does I think it's like an image. It's mainly an image startup, like an image gen startup. He's like a well-known. I'll put the link in the show notes. He's like a well-known indie hacker. He actually said that the best models that he has used for people generation actually are the ones that are in the not safe for work space. These like hijacked or open source image models, the diffusion that are trained on like a lot of pornography. And he said because at least back then, this was a while ago, they were trained on more actual anatomy. So actually rendering like people with you remember for a while, image generation models just couldn't generate a hand without 6 fingers and stuff. And he said those models were actually better for rendering people with their clothes on. His app is a safe for work one. It's like, generate an image of me for like LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile or whatever, that sort of stuff, which I found interesting. So it may actually be that if they do generate, because if the training data set in X has a bunch of that stuff in there, then maybe the models that they generate will actually be better than the sanitized versions, which will be interesting. All right, so that's Codex. Anything else you want to talk about before we go into this agent builder, agent kit, and chat UI?
I was curious. Again, this is kind of could be a sidebar here, but have you tried factory agents or droids?
I haven't. This guy spoke at the Interrupt conference, and this is built on top of
LangChain conference. But so we saw that. When was that? Like
that was in May.
Yeah,
it was good. He didn't talk very much about the specifics of how they build their graphs and stuff. He was keeping he was pretty closed about it, and I was like, oh, I wanted to see more, but yeah.
They've started. I hadn't really heard of them, and since then, like at LangChain, that was the first time I heard of Factory. But I've seen a lot of stuff about droids lately, so I downloaded it, kind of messed with it a little bit. So I was just curious what your experience was. To me, it's like another one of those things you can use as an MCP, or you can use like Codex, Claude Code, Open Code, and Droids kind of like all together as different tools. So I'm still trying to figure out what's the best mix and how do you do that?
Right. So this is like autonomous coding agents, but is flexible around the model provider because it's built on LangChain. It can do that, right? So that's cool. Do they have their own models? Do you know? It's kind of like Devon, yeah.
I don't
From the Cognition Lab guys.
Yeah, I
the
don't
Devon.
remember for sure, but I think they're just using the regular OpenAI and Anthropics.
I do remember this guy said that they were more enterprise focused, right?
Yeah.
And Sequoia's backing them as well. Like, I just want one that's just like, I am going to go out and use Codex and Claude Code and Droids and Devon and get you the best, lowest cost, best execution, fastest response. Like, I want meta. Meta.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's similar to, they're not the only ones, but OpenCode put out a product called like Zen, OpenCode Zen or something like that. And the idea is it auto selects the best models for you. It's kind of like a model router, I guess. But take that a step further and you have it like a recommendation system for different types of agents. I think what we're both after.
You use OpenCode, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I would say probably Claude Code, Codex, and then OpenCode occasionally. And it's primarily around, seeing what you can actually do with the open source models. So if I'm using OpenCode, I'm generally not using OpenAI or Anthropic.
Right. Wonder how they do that. Grok Code.
And I'd set it up.
Grok
I think
Code.
I showed. I actually use Ollama Turbo through OpenCode. We showed that on a previous episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that still part of your workflow, that Ollama Turbo? So local with like cloud boost? Maybe this is why Grok Code is going up, is just basically people are giving it away for free. Don't know what's going on with that.
But yeah, I'm using Ollama Turbo a lot. So I've built it into cloud-based agents, local agents, desktop app that I've kind of customized for myself, OpenCode. I mean, and they're starting to put more and more models on the cloud version. So I think it's awesome. Of course, counterintuitive and to what a lot of people use Ollama Local for, but for what it is, and it's a new offering, I think it's pretty cool.
It is really cool. I still sort of don't really understand the nuance, right, of like cloud versus like having this boost. How much of the workload is local? How much of it goes up to the cloud? Like what?
It's 100% cloud based. So when I say like boost, or I might have even called it accelerator or something at some point, but that's not really correct.
So it's just a cloud hosting thing from Ollama.
Yeah, it's just a cloud hosted model. Yep.
Okay.
But if you use the Ollama app, or like I said, in my own app that I have, if you want to use like say Quinn 3 Coder, I think would be one that's in both.
Yeah, cloud.
You can select.
Coder.
Oh yeah, there you go. So it has a button for.
This is one of those. This is one of those apps that just sits in my desktop but hardly ever gets used. Like I was using it for like the Gemma, these Gemma models, these local Gemma models for dev, but yeah.
But it doesn't allow uploads or MCP or I don't know, some other things. That's why I made my own.
This is just a demo, really.
Yeah.
It's not really for this purpose. They just built that to basically show people. Yeah, cool. All right, let's get moving. So I want to go through this and then hand it over to you. The last thing to talk about is what they did on agents. So they released, this is the agent builder, but I might just go back to the actual blog post and talk through it. So Agent Kit, they have a visual builder, right, which they did a massive demo of, which we can talk about. I'm surprised that they did that, but yeah, we can talk through the details of why. And also the execution, I've got a few, it's interesting. Then there's the registry of connectors, makes sense. And then there's also this chat kit element, which I thought was really cool. And it's kind of like the AI SDK UI that Vercel has, where it's just a bunch of reusable components that you can use and it makes your app or your app execution feel like what's very similar or very familiar to users who use OpenAI all the time. So I thought that was cool. And you can actually use it with their agent SDK kind of open agent, like Open SDK. So if you did want to use it with other providers, other toolkits. So if you wanted to hook up LangChain in the behind the scenes, you can. As far as what I was reading, where is it? It is agents. And I want to just go and check that out a little bit before we go into the agent builder. They've still got their agents SDK. It's the same as it's been. And then there's this advanced chat kit thing where you can basically just use it to run apps that you want. My agents SDK. Sorry, I'm bouncing around. Chat kit is what I want.
And again, it's probably just a familiarity thing, but all these new products, I'm having a hard time finding them. It's like they have, I don't know if it's too much documentation or...
Well, for these guys, I don't know. I find actually OpenAI is like, they're relatively constrained actually in terms of the products they release, and they're also quite limited. I guess they could go over the top, but it seems like they have like a less is more kind of approach. So this chat kit component is really cool because then you can just embed it in your front end. And they're basically trying to take on like a cloud hosted kind of agent component thing, kind of like they saw what LangChain was doing with like LangChain Cloud or LangGraph Cloud, for example, to take that on. It's a different execution, I know, but sort of like it's a version of that, right? Where you can just host these things and it's just like not host, quote unquote host, but it's just like you hit them and then it's all hosted in that one environment. If you've got a very simple agent with like, a bit of a vector store that's basic and a bunch of that stuff. So it's actually small, seems like simple execution sort of stuff compared to some of the more enterprise stuff that you can do with some of the other providers like LangChain. Yeah, like this kind of thing, right? Where it's basically like OpenAI chat kit service sort of handles a bunch of stuff. It hits the APIs and then you've got basic stuff of storage like threads and persistence and then file storage. Here, what I wanted to show you is the playground of this because that's actually kind of cool. They have like these ones. It's like chat kit world, sort of like examples of what you can build. This is an example kind of thing where you've got a lot of like, these are the kind of components that you can hook into via their chat kit UI. And then there's a widget builder here where you can just say, this is a bunch of widgets and things you can hook into. This was shown in the demo on the demo day, but you can go and grab a bunch of these and sort of load them in. This is the component, open it in the widget editor. So it's kind of like a UI copy and paste kind of thing. You can download the components, kind of like what we've seen with a bunch of other vibe coding tools. And then it gives you the definitions across these components. So I guess this is kind of like what they're hoping would be like a bunch of potential ChatGPT enabled apps that would persist their kind of like their approach to building apps across different platforms, different websites, different SaaS apps, these sorts of things. So it's all pretty basic, but it's kind of cool. These are all in the developer docs, and then you've got the widget builder and then the playground here. So you can sort of play around with it, create different examples. This is a utility bill analysis widget chat component, and then you can customize it. And you can use all of these elements that everyone now has to build into their app, right? If you're building anything to do with AI, everyone expects, all right, what's it doing? Give me my reasoning flow. All right, you've got all of the components that you want to put in here. It's kind of like what Copilot Kit was trying to do, right?
But it doesn't show you all that. Like you can't see all that detail in this UI, right?
No, this is just a playground, but you could expose that stuff, right? If you wanted to. I guess it's more like a UI kind of customization kind of play. This is just a playground, to be honest, but yeah. You can, like in the API, you can expose the reasoning blocks, right? You can do that here in OpenAI, and you can do it with Claude as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sort of like if you're going to embed these things in your app, this is kind of like a faster way or a fast start for you to be able to do it. I don't know. I'm more of a front end guy, so I like this sort of stuff. You're more of a back end guy.
I'm the opposite. I'm like,
you're the back end guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you can just export it, right? So that was cool. Now,
well, unlike a lot of things where you're giving me shit about how I say can't wait to dive into it, and then it's not enough time. Like this is significant enough that I am excited to check it out, but there's not really a choice. I think this is pretty substantial release or set of releases.
Yeah, it's interesting. So let's talk about that for a second. So one of the comments, like a lot of people were like, oh, this is going to kill a bunch of startups. And I had that initial reaction at the start, but then I was looking at it and I'm not exactly sure. So number one, this is like developer centric, right? The way that this agent kind of environment is built is kind of very developer centric, but it's developer centric in a no code, low code kind of way in comparison to, say, Flowwise, which has been around for a very long time on top of LangChain, is sort of very similar, right? LangFlow is another one, but they're not really like consumer grade prosumer grade, kind of like N8N is, which is like the one that's exploding on X. I don't know if you've seen that. It's like so many like go-to-market guys, anyone who tries to drive leads for a living, like talks about it, is a bit more kind of prosumer than this, in my opinion, and it's more capable. Like, whereas this isn't that capable yet. So, for example, when I was looking at some of these examples, that's the first point. The second point is like I don't know how many, I don't know how many people would like to use this. If you're technical enough, you probably just want to go into the code. I don't know. I don't know what kind of adoption this environment will get. Specifically because this kind of thing has been available in like Microsoft, the Microsoft 360 suite for a while, right?
That's exactly when you asked my first thought. Actually, that was it.
And I work in a company.
It's like Power Automate,
Power Automate, that sort of stuff. And I work in a company with a lot of people, and a lot of people have had access to that. I don't know how many are actually building, consumer level agents that can do real tasks. Some of the so this is it. It's built on React Flow, so you can auto generate a bunch of these things. Like that's often what you see is like vibe coded apps like this, is sort of like vibe coded kind of agent builders look a bit like this. And then you can go and customize each component. One thing that I thought was cool is like they've got their guardrail components in here, which is a bit more advanced than I've seen, or a bit more kind of a bit better than I've seen from some of these kinds of apps, which I did like. So that's kind of nice. Particularly given that it's hooked in to a bunch of OpenAI kind of functionality. It would be fast. Like, this is a fast way to launch agents. The fact that you can't use voice is kind of annoying, because I would want to use this for some of those more like those voice agents, or like text plus voice agents potentially on websites, or like hooked up to a Twilio phone number, like I was showing you with the 11 Labs kind of version of this. So everyone's kind of building a version of these, right? And then some of the stuff that's like very dev centric, which are these like while loops, like while, I can embed like a little logic block in here to execute these kinds of, things, like a new node, and then go to the agent, do whatever. But that sort of stuff, like anyone who writes code doesn't want to do that in a visual editor, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
No one wants to do it. If you know how to write code, you don't want to use this. So again, it's sort of like, I don't know. The other factor is like what I think would really work is if I could then, which might be in the roadmap, is if I could then embed nested versions of these, which so I can route agent to agent. And that would become more interesting, which is kind of like what you can do with a supervisor and a sub agent, right? In LangChain.
Yeah. And one of my big questions around kind of along those same lines is around reusability and using different agents together. So there's the deploy button or publish up in the top right hand corner. This is where the other day I hit publish, and then I waited. I spent like 2 seconds trying to figure out how do I use this published version, and then I moved on to something else. But did you catch that? Like, how do I publish, deploy,
how do you deploy this?
Share, actually use it as like an endpoint, or within ChatGPT, or any other way? Do you know?
So yes, the way it works is you need the SDK, and then there's like the chat kit components. Basically what you do is you've got like the workflow ID here, and then you have an allowed domain. She covered this, the product manager, or whoever did the demo on the demo day, actually showed this live. Basically you just take that ID and chuck it in. The ID is in Agent Kit. There's like a reference point, so you can actually just plug this in the chat kit component, you plug that workflow ID in. And then if you go over to say agent kit, where is my agent kit?
Gotcha.
Yeah, it'll
Yeah, I
just call
didn't click
that.
on
And
the code button.
but that's just a chat widget, right? That's a chat widget when you're on, that's like a front end UI kind of experience based on chat kit, which is great, but it's not really like, it's not like a back end kind of like agent service thing. Where's my chat kit? Chat kit. Yeah.
So
Embedding chat kit in your UI.
Actually,
it's here. It's this component where, so that's when you put it over the top, and then you basically just reference the workflow ID in your deployment of it on the front end. So that.
Yeah, now that I see that, it's actually, it's like very similar to Copilot Studio and how you, also Azure AI Foundry. It's kind of similar way of how you kind of do like a first draft or test outline, I guess, of the agent. And
well,
then
and
you can...
like the first guys that I saw to do this was Flowwise, right? And they did it years ago. And it works pretty much exactly the same way. And all they do is like, you've just got a deploy component. You just click deploy. Yeah. And you just embed that as a chat component. This has been around for like, I saw this the first time I saw LangChain. So what was that, like 2023? Yeah, like, or no, earlier. Like, this is really old, this approach. For a chat embed, which is very different to say like an ambient agent that actually can like execute across multiple endpoints. You can have it embedded across like the connectors, and the experience of the agent can be connected across multiple places. Like, that's one thing. The other factor is, so these guys really are probably better at, and I know I've talked about them before, they're a Y Combinator starter, Gumloop. I really like the way that they've executed a lot of their UI around this, where you've got like composability. You can reference agent flows, like when you want to do a workflow, like which is not necessarily the best way to execute these things, but like a workflow like this. This is like an analysis of the build kind of YouTube.
Yeah.
Components, and then you can like combine things. These guys like have figured out a lot of this UI stuff, and then you can like reference other workflows and like push outputs to different agents and do a bunch of really complex stuff. That being said, so I say that as in like these guys are further down the path. That's fine, but OpenAI controls the category, right? So what actually is kind of annoying is like, yeah, we're looking at this going, oh, I wish it did this, I wish it did that. They've got so many users that they can probably just take what works across all of those prosumer apps, embedded in here, take those learnings and control, and just take the market. So if they could do it well, then like if they do it well, which they probably will because they know how to make products. So it might come up and compete with those guys. But
yeah,
my big thing around this is that their philosophy is completely different for building agents. And I don't know if it's correct, which is like the LangChain graph-based agent architecture and philosophy is very different to just building workflows, right?
Yeah, same. I'm like, I must be misunderstanding something here, because it seems like a step backward in terms of non-deterministic and autonomous agents and stuff like that.
Yeah.
One thing I would say just on the surface, having the SDK and the actual code is a major step up from, like, I've used Langflow, which is very similar to like the visual drag and drop nodes type of thing. So you can use a lot of LangChain and even LangGraph agents, I believe, in here. But then
But Langflow is it was just the same as it was just built on top of LangChain as well, right? Sort of the same, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's basically like it uses all the LangChain packages plus others, and it's a visual drag and drop. But then
I think these guys got bought. These guys got bought by someone recently.
Actually. I could have, Data Stacks, I think. I could have, maybe I'm missing something here too, but trying to export it. So once you've created these agents and workflows and stuff, if you want to use it outside, like export it or, refactor, port it to a different platform, it's kind of it's like an insane JSON file that's not easy to work with. So I guess, yes, with OpenAI, if they have the SDK and maybe you're not as stuck. Like if you build out some of these agents and workflows with their product, maybe if you move to something else, it's not that bad compared to the others. I don't know. But that's one of the first things that I think of.
Well, yeah, the other factor is they do have this like versioning, right? Publish changes to draft and deploy to production or not. So like if you've got, a version. So I can publish that. I've got my versions. What I don't know is if I can get routing between agents. So my agent here, this is my agent builder. Okay. I think this will be helpful because so many apps and so many platforms are built on top of the OpenAI stack, right? And it will be helpful for sequential things if someone just comes in here and says, I just really have this workflow problem that I don't want to build into my app. I can just build it here and connect it up. Maybe. But the output part is sort of like, I guess you'd have to use the code component here if you wanted to embed it. Like if the output wasn't a chat interface, if the output is just like pass these variables or pass this JSON like structured output into forms, like that I can use a handler in my app, something like that. That would also be helpful, right? Like say if you're building like I don't know, it's just a pass through a couple of steps with some guardrails and a transformation. But even then, like, I don't know how many developers would want to do that versus just building themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I probably won't use this, but I imagine a lot of people will.
To be honest, I think I'm afraid to dive into it because who knows? Maybe I'll come back next week or in the next couple of weeks and say my life has changed and this is the way.
I doubt that.
I don't think it's likely, but
yeah. I doubt that. The only other thing I wanted to show you before I hand it over to you, mate, is this. So you remember a while back, it was a long time ago, I covered that data stuff around like basically like looking at census data around company types, the kinds of spend that they have against different roles within their organizations, the total payroll spend versus total revenue, that sort of stuff. You can go back and check it out if you want, and I'll maybe share the link. So what I wanted to do related to LangChain releasing their kind of V and the fact that they've got these helper components where it's basically a generate agent, like a React agent kind of like helper function, is what I wanted to do was take that and build it into sort of like an agent universe where you could basically take these and then use the LangChain Cloud assistance function to customize different agents. So you could basically say, all right, I'm this kind of company and I want to spin up these kinds of agents using the Open Agent platform, but have it the back end just sort of like customize, or basically be customized using some of these helper functions. That was my intention. I only got so far, but I wanted to show it to you. This is sort of the actual idea. So it's basically like an agent universe where the dashboard, I might just open this properly so you can see it in an actual dashboard. And I'm building the app out in V0, and then I want to connect it to like a Supabase backend where it kind of auto generates a bunch of agents for us. So this is like an agent universe kind of thing. You can see like number of employees on the bottom, total revenue per employee on the vertical axis, and then like just a preview up here, right? So it's like, all right, who is this? Residential building construction, average firm size, 4 employees. Check that out. And then like filter it down to different segments and different sectors and stuff. So let's check out. What industry are you interested in disrupting today?
Say professional services.
Where would that be?
Is that an option?
Should be. I don't think this is a comprehensive list. Here we go. Other scientific, technical, and consulting, management consulting. This one. That's those guys. Good. Those guys need to go away. All right, sweet. And then from here, build it out kind of like the Vault, so we can see like these industries, this code, and then link it to average distribution of certain ONet like occupation types. Because you can actually get a benchmark of like for, say, management consulting services, what's the distribution of different roles that exist within that company based on survey data. So that you can actually get a sense of like, all right, of the total revenue per employee and the total employees, what's the distribution percentage of different roles within that company? They actually have that and they publish it, like the census data is published on that as a percentage. So basically you can say, all right, I want to build an agentic organization that's going to take on management consulting. Or even if you are a management consulting company, how can I adopt more agentic workflows into my organization? The next step I want to build into this is basically like a service design flow, and then take that and say, well, I can spin up this sequence of agents and these component parts of a management consulting firm. So I'm going to do that with this like LangChain release and see what it's like. Maybe we'll just like blow through our budget on Langsmith when I do this. And then you could basically just say, all right, one click deploy, and there'd be more advanced agents that actually take on some of these component parts and actually connect into the standard connectors that these organizations use. Kind of like the OpenAI agent builder, but actually useful.
So you're thinking you'd have like a base template or something that defines, like a lot of the sub agents and other things we've talked about. At the simplest level, it's like a description, system prompt, and tools for the agents. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I was thinking of also using the deep agents kind of starter. Because you're right, at its core, a bunch of them are just like, this is this labs area. A bunch of them are just like, search. Where is the overview? Deep agents. Here. Yeah, a planning tool, sub agents, file system, detailed prompt, and then a couple of tools, basically web search and a bunch of different component parts. There might be requirements for like a Python data analysis kind of container, some of those sorts of things. But start with this and have each of them be like a deep agent that has the ability to sort of like iterate on itself based on a brief that comes down from this environment here. Because these guys have set up this tool with these new kind of component parts. I was thinking of using just this one, or maybe also you could then deploy an open SWE as well if you wanted some developers, which is kind of cool. Maybe you can help me with this.
Yeah, we should collaborate, because working on similar things with templatized deep agents, React agents, etc., deploying on Cloudflare, as you guessed. But yeah.
What I really want to know is like, or how close you could get to say, and using like ChatGPT 5 with the extended thinking component, and then briefing it with basically a brief that says, for each of these industry codes, I give it like a couple of the stats on like the actual kind of profile of this industry. This is all US based data. How close could you get to a strong reflection of like the actual way that those companies create value, and identify the component parts that could be converted from services into software effectively in really solid workflows that are a real reflection of what could be achieved? So for example, in residential building and construction, this one, right? Like we don't have Optimus yet. There's only component parts of that can be executed of that kind of organizational structure. Try and get that to be automated so that you could say, right, well, for this kind of company, this is the way that it would come together. And here is the brief, and then push that in a workflow from that like output into a Claude code or a OpenSUI or like a Codex kind of generation of that, customizing the deep agent template. Like how close could you get to some sort of automated flow like that? So people could look at it and say, like, someone who works in residential building and construction could actually look at it and go, yes, I could deploy that because that's a great reflection of actually how my business runs today, in that like I need agents that can automatically create plans and designs that are compliant with the local building codes. That's an automated component that could go to an agent, and then that agent could then be hooked into my just a simple email engine, and then potentially build my project plans and manage my demand planning around my staff and my contractors for my different projects. Like those are agents that would pop out if it was done well.
Yeah.
And I want to do that for like all of these. So these, like every single one of these bubbles.
Yeah. And I don't know if it would apply exactly, but when we talked about the Cloudflare VibeSDK, those are the types of use cases that I saw where it's like, yeah, this is an example toy app. But if you applied that kind of idea where you can chat with an agent that has context using your own defined templates, data sources, etc., then you could easily build something like that, I think. I don't know if that's the answer, but that's where I saw
I was also
Cloudflare stuff.
Yeah. Oh, well, and a couple of things on this. So I was looking at the LangChain guys published a blog post about benchmarking Claude's ability to write like LangGraph and LangChain kind of apps, right? So they were trying to benchmark like, well, how could you make it better at doing that stuff? So I want to look at that because like optimizing into the language and into the packages and into the execution is important. But could you just make it like, all right, clone the deep agent like package and then like spin that up? That's one. Or could it just be you have a generic enough one and then you go into say LangGraph Cloud, like the cloud hosted thing, and just say create me an assistant, a sub assistant, the assistance function where it's like, all right, I've got my planner agent that's good at project management. All I need to do is customize it for the construction industry, and that might be good enough as long as it gets the right tools. It might just be enough to just say, give me a great little prompt. It might just be prompt engineering, right? Which would be way faster because then all we'd have to do is just have the same one, creates a sub assistant and then hooks it in. The other thing that is this I don't know if you played much with this OpenSui thing that the guys released from LangChain at all. Like, I was looking at that again. It is awesome. Like, in terms of the scope of what it achieves, it's pretty impressive. Like,
it is. It's
yeah,
really cool interface and the workflow and everything. The reason I don't is because you have to use the APIs, and now we're so spoiled with Claude Code and stuff. But I was generating code and it was getting pretty expensive.
Right. Well, what I was thinking is sort of like this could be the endpoint. So like it goes in here and the OpenSui generates like the custom code.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Was the main thing. But just because it's built on top of LangChain doesn't necessarily mean it's good at building LangChain and LangGraph apps.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy to me. I mean, there's so many options, and like I could think of so many ways to do that now. And it's funny that, I don't know, a year ago or so, you ask people like, how do I, deploy agents in the cloud and have interconnectivity between them? And it was like no answers then. And now it's overabundance of ways to do this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. There's too many to choose from. But I know I probably won't be choosing the OpenAI one. Do you want to go through this? Yeah, the Cloudflare MCP stuff?
Yeah. Before we jump on that, I guess backtracking a little bit, did you see the link I put in the chat, this X link?
Yeah. So like the OpenAI agent build is built on React Flow. Everyone who wants to build like anything in React that's got like node-based flows uses React Flow. It's great. It's a rock solid package. And so he's like, all right, thanks for using my package.
Yeah, their tweet says, "Hey OpenAI, we just saw that you're using our open source library React Flow. We offer startup discount codes. Let us know. Let us know if you're interested."
That's such a great example of
that was great marketing, and
yeah, like that's a great example of like open source. Like there are engineers who are excellent who just dedicate themselves to some open source packages and then they try and monetize them in a basic way. So for example, React Flow, there's like pro components and like you get some better support. And I've looked at it potentially for some apps and I'm like, all right, maybe I would pay for that. It's like $99, right? Tailwind is the same. Tailwind is everywhere, right? Completely and say Vercel leverages Tailwind everywhere, like in Next.js, and it's like a standardized package, right? And those guys have a pro version, right? OpenAI is using like this open source package. One person manages that React Flow thing. OpenAI's valuation is like $500 billion now. They're making like their run rate should be about $12 billion a year. This guy's like, oh yeah, just pay me $99 for the pro version. Like surely OpenAI in that context could give him something, right? Like that is a really like a thing that I don't like about the open source world. I love that you can hook into this stuff and everyone just contributes and it's great. But when these big companies hook into these things, I'm just like, oh, maybe you guys should do something for those people.
Yeah, no kidding. You would think, but who knows? I watched you mentioned Tailwinds, and I can't remember what YouTube channel, but I watched an interview with the CEO, the guy who started Tailwinds. I can't remember his name off the top. But man, you could just tell the guy, he's so miserable. And he's like, he even said in the interview, like, I can't wait for my next act, whatever, whatever that is. He's trying to maintain this open source. And I think he said he had like $1 million in salaries he
Right.
has to pay out was it per month, I think? Something like that. And just the stress to try to do good for everybody else.
Yeah, it's if you're interested in that area, I think I've mentioned this this book before. I think it's called Building in Public. Working in Public by Nadia Ekbal is really good on this. But in that book, she talks about like that. It's like open source culture. And she basically says that like the really big packages have companies that stand behind them and fund it and make it happen. And then there's this like taxonomy of other ones where it's like a stadium environment where there's like millions of people using these packages every day and just like a very small team or like one person who has to deal with all the crap. And they get overwhelmed, she said, when she talks to them. Like some people, they're just like, because developers can be real pricks sometimes. Like they're like, why haven't you resolved this? You know, I opened this last night at 12 o'clock. I'm like, mate, I was taking my kids to school and I have to go to work and I do this on Saturday sort of thing. And it just grinds people down. And eventually they just crack and they're just like, fuck this. And like, it's really tough for those. Like I'm never been good enough to build any packages like that. Right. But it's really hard. There's got to be a better way.
Yeah. Seems like a rough life.
Well, for some of them it works. Like DHH mentioned that about like Rails when he's talking about like Rails as an open source thing. And someone said, well, why didn't you try and monetize Rails? And he's like, well, luckily Basecamp, 7 Signals, what became Basecamp, was successful financially enough for him to be able to do that. But in some instances, other open source packages just don't have enough economic value underneath them to be hived off for the founders or the managers to actually have a good life or make a decent living, in which case they start trying to take back chunks of the open source community into a commercial model. And then that breaks the kind of relationship with the developers who've kind of adopted it. So it's really, it's a hard nuance unless you've got something successful on the side, I guess.
Yeah. Do you have a good understanding of where, like, if the Linux Foundation takes over an open source project, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are, you're speaking to projects that are like required by large organizations. They can't let it fail. But do you know, like if it's adopted by the Linux or, taken on by the Linux Foundation, does that necessarily mean you're kind of like in the clear as far as being supported through I'm not asking the question very well, but do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, so recently that happened with the ADK, right? The agent development kit from Google. Like they donated it to the Linux Foundation, right? I don't really know what that means other than maybe trying to get a little bit more cachet in terms of like independence from Google. If there was like a concern that developers are like, I don't want to adopt this if the only people who are using it are Google, maybe. But based on that book, what she found from a bunch of like research was just, unless you have a couple of big companies really committed to a framework or like something like a framework or a package or whatever, then it's very challenging for it to be successful because they then generally dedicate developer resources and pay for those resources during the day when people are at work to work on it, right? Which is what happened with Rails. I'm more familiar with because I used to be in that community, like Shopify and Basecamp and GitHub and Twitter were on it for a while, right? And they just like had this thing and a bunch of other companies. Another example would probably be something like React, right? That came out of Meta. Like you need big companies to like, and sometimes they do it for strategic purposes, right? Like they push these things to try and dominate a market, whatever it is. So, but the really kind of like more open source initiatives that have like open source at their core culturally they might have a steering committee, they might have a group of people, but they still have these big commercial entities pushing it. Like Databricks is another one, like the guys who started Databricks, their PhDs, I can't remember what what packages is, but their PhDs were actually on this kind of like database type. Then they were funded by A16 and Z. So obviously they're going to keep pushing it and have it, and it will be supported commercially and maintained. That was sort of the finding. It's like, unless you've got a couple of those big plank kind of partners, it's going to be a punish.
Yeah, on that. We're very, very, very lucky and take it for granted, like what we can do with open source software. And it takes a lot of people, and apparently a lot of pain from a lot of people. So
yeah, even like when you look at, like, I really loved back in the day SourceForge. Do you remember SourceForge?
Mm-hmm.
That was like, open source kind of software before GitHub was around. It was sick. Just like the discovery component of just like hunting through there for kind of random shit. It was just so much fun. And then GitHub took over, right? And GitHub was like the open source place. What was that sold to Microsoft for like $6 billion?
Yeah, I don't know.
Not a great deal of that went back to all the people that built that community, right? If any. Maybe they should have given Microsoft shares to a bunch of those people. Anywho, show me Cloudflare, Mr. Cloudflare.
Right. Yeah, can we?
Are you in love? Are you getting married to Cloudflare?
Yeah. It's not public yet, but
it's a boy.
They have they announced some program where they're opening their offices to startups and teams and stuff like that. So I think I submitted an application. So that'd be cool if they're providing more resources and stuff like that. So I need your help with Sora. Like I can generate videos and everything, but how did you create our video with our faces in it? I haven't spent enough time researching, like, how do you do that?
I can show you actually on Notion.
You have to fine tune. Oh, did you have it you might have had it as an attachment or something for the show?
Yeah. So I was using Replicate for that, because it was a bit easier, because it was just like one shot. Like, it wasn't like a sequence. It was just like random shit. I was just basically, so I went into GPT and I was like, generate a bunch of like random scenes. And then I used a keyword in each one. So like I was trying to use dev words. So it was like Azure. So like Azure Foundry, like, and then there was like one Game of Thrones style or like medieval, whatever, and llama, like, and all those things. And I was like, all right, well, generate me a scene of a man walking, because it was always a man walking or a man like rowing or whatever, or a man, all that sort of stuff. So they were always really short.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a one little paragraph prompt that was optimized in GPT. And then I used Minimax on Replicate each time. And I was just like, and I used the same image each time. So an image of you, an image of me. And I would just say, a man walks through the Amazon rainforest, and then slowly looks up at the sun. And that's the first one of you. And I just did that, and then did it a couple of times until it looked okay. But even then, like, the face consistency is pretty poor, because that was a while ago, right? I think it would be better now, but
yeah. And
then I just consistently got it through, and I would try a bunch of them. And then I can even show you here, actually. You can see the number of them. Yeah, so that's basically what I did. I wasn't using something like, if I had have used like that one I showed you last week, that Luma Labs one, it would have been better just to subscribe to one of these tools for a month. It was the same price effectively as going through the API. I could replicate by the end of it. But here are all the predictions. That was back in June, right? And it's Minimax Video 1 was what I used, and it was that one didn't work. This one.
Yeah, so I guess like because Sora's so good, if you take a video from Sora and then use Minimax to put your face on it, it's still going to be lower.
Well, yeah, it's cheaper. And it was cheaper, like way cheaper than that. At the time, the VO Fast didn't exist. VO3 Fast would actually be great, but for that, or this Seedream one, I don't know. They're all so much better now. Sorry,
yeah, I don't know how people are generating all these. Like, I was able to get some Stephen Hawking's videos, but how people are generating videos of like known celebrities and stuff like that, I really can't get it to work. And apparently, Sam Altman has a persona, so I haven't tried that. Do you just say OpenAI's CEO or something like that?
I think the way it works, I didn't realize this, but in Sora, you can allow yourself to be used by the model. So they've got some functionality where you can say, I agree to have my likeness remixed. And so that obviously turns the guardrail off when you say Sam Altman doing this, Sam Altman doing that.
Yeah. So do you just upload? Maybe that's only an option through the UI because I don't have access. I've just been using it through the API. So maybe,
Well, yeah, can you see this? This is like, so you
Yeah.
OpenAI, and then you have like an optional image or video as a reference for the generation, like this man or like Bob. There's like that's a reference to like a well-known.
Oh, okay.
person.
So you can do that on.
This is Replicate. I hadn't actually checked this out, but you have to put your OpenAI key in as well.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'll just have to check.
So it's just the same. This is just a wrapper. That's just a wrapper around the playground. Obviously, you could probably do it in the playground. But yeah, this one, where are my predictions? I want to show you because they're kind of funny. And you can see the number of times. So like, what was this one? Yeah, that's me walking through a garden of models. Like, so I was like, all right, well, this is like a man walks with purpose through the mist along a path. Each side of the path are Greek and Roman statues in white marble. And then I had my subject reference image. That was it. But you can see like the face and stuff. Like it's sort of, it's not as good. It's not that good. And
cool.
then like,
within the Sora interface, it's cool how you can do the storyboard from text or video. I only have the old Sora, so I'm actually looking forward to that. In fact, it is a background side project. I took the VibeSDK and used Claude through GitHub only to refactor it as a Sora, like video generation and pipeline and sharing app.
really? Can you show me that?
Yeah, and
that sounds cool.
It's it actually kind of works. There's just some stuff that's broken. But for like,
this is my favorite video in that intro, actually. This one of you, and it was a pretty simple prompt. It's like, strides with purpose over a mountain track. He walks past some llamas. And then the fact that you sort of like that it added you just sort of like looking confused, seeing the llamas and going, what?
Look mad, look angry.
But again, like the face, like you look at the face, it's not exactly right. But yeah,
right.
Yeah, show me that.
Well, I started setting it up called Sora platform. So yeah, it basically just took these tabs that they had down here for, this is like if you share something publicly, so more of the socialization, or you could do like remixes, kind of like the Sora app, the actual Sora platform.
Dude, this is sick.
And then refactored this. If you remember, the VibeSDK version had like React elements and stuff like that as templates. So the idea here would be like blueprints where you can basically like a schematic for your whole video. Maybe like we're talking about the JSON for VO3.
Yeah,
so I actually did create something, but you just can't see it in here. Maybe I'll, if I can get this to work better.
Did you get an output out of it?
Yeah. So if you actually put in a prompt, it shows that it failed. However,
or you just open a video up if it's on your local. That's cool.
But it, you can see in Sora that it actually did, even though it says that it failed.
Right.
It is generating videos. So I just made some random, like, kind of modeled after like James Bond film type stuff, like 50s, 60s era action film kind of script. And then I was the next step was like, okay, so how could we take something like this and use our faces and have like a pipeline for generating new intros and stuff like that.
That's cool, man. Well, that
I need to, now that you're like,
documentation.
I don't know if you're trying to get to this, but I need to protect it now. If we keep this in the episode, or maybe we'll just save it for next time. But also, the other cool thing that I think would work really well is if you remember in the VibeSDK, you can define different LLM providers and models for like planning, code review, etc. So I had it basically like re-optimize for the Sora video generation use case. So you can define different models for like your video blueprint versus prompt enhancement, etc. So again, I kind of threw this in the oven yesterday, and maybe I'll spend more time on it because it seems like it's pretty close to being functional. And then this would be,
So
you could actually
here,
build this out like Sora.
So this is Sora desktop. Is that correct?
No.
Well, what is this?
What I have pulled up here on these are, this is Sora's website.
Got it. Okay.
So
shows you how much I've actually
my
used it.
Vibe version is here. So I was just showing how when it, like in the video library section of my app, it says failed and it doesn't show the preview or anything like that. But if you go into the actual Sora, you can see that it did work. It did generate a video. So I just need to fix this so that they actually show up. And then you'd be able to do like share it publicly. And then it's kind of, that would be like similar to, you have like your own Sora platform. Socialization, you could share it. People could remix it. That's the other thing I don't know about Sora yet is can you use source content through the API? Can you use images or videos and remix them? Pretty sure you can.
Yeah, you can. I was just looking at the docs while you were chatting, and it says the remix endpoint, right?
Yeah. So, just casually building a Sora social platform competitor.
And that's all on the Vibe SDK from Cloudflare.
Yeah, I used that as a starting point.
And you built it with Claude.
Yeah, I downloaded the entire VibeSDK repo, wrote like a pretty long prompt. Oh, I think maybe that's what it was. I used GPT-5 Pro to come up with the plan of how to refactor it as a Sora app. And then I saved that as a markdown file and then just ran it through Claude Code GitHub actions a bunch of times, like in different phases to refactor it. Because, I'm just curious, like how much refactoring and actual code can it do versus just like code review. And I think it actually works really well. So I guess what I'm saying is I took the entire repo, gave it a plan, and it refactored it.
Can you show me that on GitHub? I'm fascinated about that workflow. So it's like, because I was thinking about this the other day with that web design example of like, you actually go from GitHub, like, and basically create the issues. Like, it's like, all right, create me all of the issues in GitHub as a sequence. Or is it basically just like, all right, here is a chunk of the plan, but execute it from GitHub Actions? Like, how does that work in practice? Sorry for the noob questions.
No, not at all.
I was wondering about that workflow. I didn't know how to actually execute it in practice very well. Yeah, this is the remix endpoint is basically you just point it at a video ID and then put the prompt in.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much that's it. Okay. Video ID. And it's just like extend the scene or just whatever, basically.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it. I created a MCP server as well for Sora. It takes so long. There's issues with timeout that I need to fix, but for like first try, very low effort, it actually works. But I didn't have to. I set it up so it downloads the videos to Cloudflare storage and then generates a link where you can download it. So I think that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll show that as well. Okay, so you were asking about...
Yeah, that workflow you described. So like, Claude generating the plan, that makes sense. The output being like what, like in the Claude, like .claude kind of folder, I'm assuming, in your actual repo.
Yeah.
Or wherever it goes, whatever it is. So it's the plan.
I don't remember exactly where the plan is at. Usually I call it plan. No, this is for durable objects.
That's okay.
But
wherever it is.
Yeah, essentially. So I just commit the code, and I also added I wrote some super simple scripts for generating videos through the SDK or the API. And then I referenced that as well. So it has like a a working example.
And then would it be in the GitHub Workflows folder? Like, how did you actually?
Yeah, and I didn't even create my own workflow. This is just the standard code review workflow. So you could make this actually a lot better, because this is kind of meant for just like identifying bugs and stuff like that. So I didn't even customize the workflow, but all I did, I just commit the code, and then you can run Claude on, like pull request. But before that, I would just open a new issue and say code review, and then like functionality or phase, whatever. And then you can reference the plan. So
yeah, okay.
Review plan at,
yep, right.
and then, just kind of tell it what to focus on or identify issues. So I didn't even really pay attention. Like I just, for like hours while I was working on other stuff, I would just run it through like code review and then focus on this phase and then just commit it, create a pull request, commit. I just did that for several hours, and then it.
Right. And is that all from the IDE, from the terminal interface? Or is that actually in, because you know how you can connect up your Claude to GitHub, right? So you're just like looking at a tick over in the terminal, and you're just saying like, work on this issue. Well, how do you actually trigger it? Like,
I use GitHub desktop, and you can also do it through that. Like when you write your summary of your changes and description and stuff, you can reference Claude in that, and then when you push and commit, it automatically picks it up.
Can you show me some of the history? Like, can you open the history on that repo and
Tom
on the pull requests? Can I see?
Getting a little personal here, man.
Open the kimono, my friend. Open it up. I want to see it all. Yeah, closed issues. If you click on those.
Yeah, closed.
So
you can see like on these.
Yeah, so just Claude.
Like later on, I was just doing code review. Like not even specific instructions after a while. So it goes through and it writes this really detailed summary. And then I just come back and make a comment and say, remediate your findings. You don't really need to paste all this again, but for some reason I do.
And where was that from? That was from the original comment, right?
Yeah, I took... Sorry.
Or maybe it's the output at the bottom, perhaps.
Okay, so I took like recommended summary.
Got it.
Pasted it, but I don't think you really need to. You could just say, remediate or address the issues you recommend or focus on the high critical issues. And I do that too. Like,
so it's just like a reflection loop. Yeah. Reflect and then act, but through GitHub action, like through.
If you want to focus on a specific, like a better way, if you're more actually paying attention more, is like let's focus on this one thing and then just keep going down this plan. So yeah, this is like the most simple way of doing it. I'm not saying it's the right way by any means. It's just, again, like in the background, it's very easy to just commit at Claude review, commit at Claude review. And that's where we're talking about all these different background tasks and long running tasks and agentic loops and stuff. And this would be insane when I figure out how to use multiple different like Codex and Claude and how to orchestrate this better.
Because I don't usually use the GitHub desktop app. I always use it through the terminal, right? Just for commits and stuff. And now that it's just like, all right, it's just natural language. It's just Claude, do this, commit, like just commit it. I started using Whisper, actually, the voice interface, and that's cool. Like Whisper Flow.
Yeah, not Whisper the model.
Whisper Flow, the application, and like it's one of those things where to remember so much. Yeah. It's hard to remember because you just use But once I start remembering, I'm like, why haven't I been doing this the entire time? Because I've seen it on so many videos, and I'm like, I'm just trying to push myself to go to voice, and then you can just talk to it. It's so much better. You're just like, all right, Claude, commit that, like all that sort of stuff. But
yeah, I agree, man. I have it, and I always forget about it, and I think you can actually use your phone as a microphone, can't you? So like even if you're away from your
Yeah, if you're on Mac, yeah, you can do that. Use your phone as a microphone. But last question on this is like the actually opening up the issue is just a manual thing in this flow. You're just opening an issue each time, right? And you're just putting it in and saying, or do you do that through the GitHub? Because there's the GitHub Claude app integration, right? And you can ask Claude to open a new issue. So you could actually have it as a flow. You're like, hey, Claude, open a new issue and put this in there at Claude Code Review.
right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Could you do it that way? Yeah.
Yeah.
I assume.
Let me.
Or is it just an automation? Maybe you could just do this and just do it 20 times.
So you're saying, I mean, maybe I can show it real quick. Let me see if this works.
I don't know, but I'm assuming I want to try this. So yeah.
You're saying in the git commit,
Yeah. So if you open your terminal,
make a comment to create a new issue for, I'll just say like authentication.
yeah, like I don't know if you can pull up the terminal on your machine. I can do it if you like, but because I can't see your terminal on the screen. But if you put it in, hey Claude, open a new issue called Code Review and put the comment at Claude review the code, will that work? And they just have a bit of a loop where you could have like Claude sub-agents that do this, right? You could just have a sub-agent that like opens the new issue, and then you could have like the next sub-agent that like does the review, and then the regular Claude can just pick up the comments and put them back in. Maybe, I don't know. Did that work? If you go to your
Yeah,
if you go to this repo,
I just pushed a commit. Which screen am I on? Okay, so let's see if the action is running.
at Claude open a new issue focused
Yeah, and I've had that. Like I've had it where Claude doesn't always pick up the mention. So yeah, you can. I don't know why it's not working here. It's not kicking off the action. Maybe with this template I have to mention code review or something. But yeah, I don't know. There's some nuances there, but I've just been doing it manually through like creating my own issue manually. So yeah,
was
maybe
very cool, mate.
if you mess with that, maybe and I can have a better understanding and keep working on it. We can go more in depth on that because I think a lot of people are interested on that side.
I really want to see more like Claude advanced workflows, like everything they talk about in some of the demos that the Anthropic guys do. And they're like, and we've heard about these guys using it this way, but they're never like, and this is like the best practice. They do talk about it. I think they've got some content with like how we use Claude at Anthropic, which would cover some of that stuff. Yeah, that's cool, man. All right. I look forward to you competing with Sora. But yeah, show me.
Yeah, OpenAI, little startup company, doesn't stand a chance with Sora platform. All right. Well, you have to jump here shortly, I think, right? So
20 minutes. Yeah, let's go into what we came here to talk about, which is MCP.
Code Mode. All right, we're going to talk about Cloudflare Code Mode. And this is pulling up the blog post, but this is in preview, and you can only test it locally so far. It's not supported if you actually run on Cloudflare. It's my understanding. So all right, well, let's talk about Code Mode. So this is a blog post, came out the end of September. And like I just said, it's in preview. You can run it and test it locally. Still on a wait for the being able to do it in the cloud, I believe. But I'm not going to read this entire blog post, but I highly recommend reading through it. blog.cloudflare.com/code-mode. And essentially, if you spent any time researching and working with MCP, there are a lot of, there's a lot of MCP haters out there, or people say this is the wrong abstraction. It doesn't really make sense. And we've talked about it quite a bit. I mean, there's some truth to that, definitely. But at the end of the day, what it accomplishes, being MCP, that is a standardized way that we're using tools and accessing servers across the board. So no matter what you think, there's a lot of value in that. So these guys at Cloudflare took an interesting approach where, we've also talked about, I think even last week, touched on the idea of we're going to get to a point where we're deploying a lot of schema-based MCP tools, schema-based agents, and ultimately that results in like a just-in-time delivery of, whatever agents and tools you need. So that's not necessarily what this code mode is, but it's right along those lines. So essentially, just to jump into it, traditionally with MCP servers, you connect all your servers, it lists all your tools, and as soon as you launch your MCP client, whether it's Claude Desktop or another app, it essentially downloads the schema for the tool calls, the descriptions, the tool names, and if you load up too many servers and too many tools, it has a big, massive impact on the quality and the amount of context that you're consuming from the context window. So at Cloudflare, they've integrated this into their Agents SDK. So I think it's more than a proposal, but it's this interesting idea of essentially having the agent write TypeScript code for those tool calls rather than the traditional method. And apparently they are getting a lot better performance with that. So I'm trying to see.
Yeah, one of the things that I found interesting about this philosophy, which is like, all right, write code that interacts with the MCP as opposed to the model interacting with the MCP, is number one, like the token encoding that comes from the tool calls is basically like, it's like special tokens effectively, like that are converted. So it's not necessarily like transferable. That's number, and like, or like interact, you can't interact necessarily as easily with it. But number two is the like MCP, if you can get code interacting with MCP, it's better because like you can interact with an MCP server even if you don't really understand anything about the API that it's connected to, which is quite a powerful kind of transferable interconnection kind of concept, right? So if you can just use code to standardize the output or like engage with it more reliably and consistently, MCP brings like a whole bunch of power that APIs don't, because like in order to interact with an API as a developer, you need to kind of know how that API works, what you can and can't do. But you don't necessarily need like MCP, you don't need that. You just put it in there and it's like, all right, well, get what you can, get me what I need, right? So that's the power of it. It's just distributed and kind of like trustless almost.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to think of it. Yeah, and I'm particularly interested in the intersection with MCP gateways. So I don't know if we've talked about that before, but there's MCP gateways out there where rather than adding each MCP server individually, you connect one endpoint.
Yeah.
And then it has access to all of your different tools. So this is not necessarily that, but it's some of the concepts are really similar. So I'm really curious on how this interacts and how you would use this concept with an MCP gateway, because I think it's taking that higher level approach, but potentially with better accuracy and performance. So, but yeah, I don't know. Initially, when I started using some of the gateways, I didn't like that idea. I like seeing every server and every tool, but the more I think about it, I'm open to other approaches, and I think that this is probably the right way to go. So yeah, again, Tom, I'm not going to go through this whole entire blog post, but anything else that jumped out to you or questions on that? Because next I'll show the example GitHub repo that they have out there.
I think the only thing I would highlight in this blog post is this little diagram here further down, the traditional MCP versus the code mode comparison, right?
Yeah, that's good.
So like that was the thing that I was looking at. All right, well, how does this vary? Sort of like there's this dynamic isolated sandbox component. Do you like this RPC bindings sort of like thing? I'm not exactly sure. Like I'm not technical really enough to kind of dive into that, but basically it's like you have this sandbox environment for this code execution over the top in code mode to load transform, kind of interact with the data that's coming back out of your tool calls. Is that generally the way to think about it?
Well, when they're speaking about bindings, are you asking about the concept of the Cloudflare bindings? Like how does it connect to this sandbox?
Yeah, or just like why is that significant? How does that work? Like is that like, because they then go on to talk about how basically to make this work, you have to have this like, not a container, but it's built based on this dynamic worker kind of thing, which goes along with it, right? So you need this environment
it's
that
a little
spins
bit
up and spins down really fast. Because to execute the code, you need some sort of kind of isolated kind of code execution environment, right? The only way it works is because they're basically saying, well, they've got this worker kind of environment that spins up in microseconds and is totally distributed and not something you have to manage.
Right. And it's a little bit confusing, but their sandbox offering, it's built on containers, but they're not quite exactly the same. So, the idea is you have a place where you can run untrusted code safely in an isolated environment. So
that's fast. I guess they're saying it's actually fast rather than there's no latency as a result. The whole idea around this is there's no latency kind of overhead is their catch, I guess, because a lot of people would be like, oh, well, how much time does this shit take? As opposed to just
and then
passing.
they talk about, this is the part where I guess maybe I'll wait for the actual full release because I don't know that you can really mess with this, but I think there's a pretty big play for Cloudflare workers for platforms here. And that's what they're talking about with the dynamic. So I believe, if I remember, they're talking about for your account, your own tenancy, you have your own sandboxes and stuff like that. So, and just a reminder, so workers for platforms is a multi-tenancy platform, or for building multi-tenancy platforms on Cloudflare. So
yeah, let's jump into the demo, man. And then I got to bounce. Sorry.
All right, Cloudflare. What kind of person are you? Are you a 1,000 browser windows open type of person? Because I have the opposite issue. I have a compulsion to close tabs, and then I close all the stuff that I already had open.
I think you can probably already tell that I'm the latter, or at least I thought I was. So I thought I had a tab problem, right? And then the other day, my wife called me into her office. She's like, tech support, the Wi-Fi is crashing. The Wi-Fi is terrible. And I walked in and basically her computer was melting down. She had 5 Chrome windows open with at least 50 tabs each. I'm like, you are destroying this CPU. What are you doing to this thing? I feel so sorry for this machine.
Yeah. My significant other she needs help with something. She'll proactively start closing everything, because I try not to, but I sit down.
You're just very judgy.
I have to reset the whole, let's just restart the computer before.
So much tab judgment.
Yeah.
It's good.
So, all right. So if you go out to Cloudflare's agents repository, they have actually quite a few cool examples and demos in this examples folder. The one we're looking at is Code Mode. So I already did this ahead of time, but I cloned this repository, and it's actually a pretty simple setup. If you look at the README in Code Mode, it gives you 6 easy steps it's a big mono repo. So you npm install at the root, npm run build at the root, and then go into the examples folder, Code Mode, and then you npm start, and that will run this little web app locally. So let me switch to that. Man, do you feel like we should do more? There's some comments I know people want or like the step-by-step walkthroughs, but it feels painful. If I were to sit here and all right, here's me setting this up.
Given that most of these things that we follow are tutorials put out by these guys, if you want the full tutorial, just follow the instructions on the GitHub repos that we generally share or that we go to, because that's kind of boring to watch. But if you need help, ask ChatGPT. Basically, put it into ChatGPT. Don't ask us for help, because we're busy.
And we do have a GitHub account for the Build podcast, and we try. I mean, we have quite a few things published out there. So
yeah,
if you're watching videos and you wish there was some type of starter or something like that, just check our GitHub. For most demos, there's something out there.
There's something up there, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I can't find. Sorry.
It's all good, man.
Well, what's weird is,
man, there's so many repos on their account.
Yeah, I love all the at least for LangChain, LangGraph, Cloudflare, some others. I pick up so much from just stepping through their tutorials and examples.
Yeah. Actually, I chatted to a developer at a conference once, and he's like, it was at a big company, not a tech company. They make things in the home, and some people would describe them as a bit of a depot. And he said that they have 30,000 repos. When he started there, he's like, we have 30,000 repos.
Who?
And I was a developer. He works like at a big company, not a tech company, but he was like, how am I supposed to figure out where everything is? It's like 30,000 GitHub repos, like private, obviously, but like, how are you going to deal with that?
Yeah, that's insane.
Mm.
All right. Well, yeah, once you follow those simple examples, so then it will launch this little web interface, and really it's just designed so that you can connect whatever MCP servers you'd like. Just put in the name and then the URL. And actually, I would assume this works with local hosted servers, but I didn't test that. Any of these that I've added are like remote MCP servers. I think all of them are using streamable. Oh, here's a SSE one. So I guess it's compatible with SSE. But just to run a simple example. So I have a time server here, and you can see that it has 6 tools: current time, relative time, days and month. And actually after this, I'll show what it looks like in like a Claude desktop or something. I think that'd probably be good. So, all right. So I run a prompt. What is the time in Austin, Texas now? And you can see that instead of just latching onto that tool that's exposed through the like definitions, it wrote its own JavaScript. Is this even right? Yeah. So that is the right time in Austin.
The Lord.
1:30. Yeah. So let's try. I don't know. Like that's pretty much the gist of it. You can't actually use this in production or anything like that, but it's a cool example that shows you the difference of how these tool calls work. So if we do like, what are the top? Say, what are the top products from the Build podcast? This is from our MCP server. I think this is actually broken, by the way. I didn't update. I didn't update cool. After a database change, I think. But okay, so here's the function. So it wrote that.
And the function is generated on the fly, right?
Yes. Yep.
And you can't influence the generation of that.
Yeah.
In any way?
That is a good question. Like how much you can specify. Because in these, I'm just doing natural language.
Mm.
But yeah, you may be able to be more specific, more pointed on how you'd like that if you're, opinionated on certain things.
Yeah. So in the document, in the docs, for this, it's like basically when you connect to an MCP server in code mode, the Agents SDK fetches the schema and then converts it into a TypeScript API, complete with the doc comments based on the schema. That then populates those tools, right? So that's how it gets the tool components before you query it. So there must be some sort of way that you can then go and interact with that, right?
Yeah, I'd like to,
within the Agents SDK.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to set this up differently so that it shows more, like it's easier to illustrate. Because if you're not familiar, this probably doesn't make a ton of sense. But yeah, that's the gist of it, Tom. I mean, not the most thrilling demo, but again, this just came out.
It's pretty cool.
Recently, overall, and I just wanted to highlight it because I think it's along the lines of what a lot of MCP developers are thinking about. And this is just one way. There's others that have tried other things as well. So
do you think this is how MCP is going to evolve? It's going to become like this kind of standard?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like just-in-time software and stuff like that, I think so. Whether it's Cloudflare's specific method, I mean, who knows? But as you know, I'm a big fan of Cloudflare. I think they do a great job, and they're kind of getting ahead of a lot of others in the background, I think.
Yeah, that's really cool. All right, thanks for showing me that. Been waiting to see how that actually works in practice. But yeah. All right, mate.
Sorry about that.
All right, let's leave it there. I got to bounce. Good to talk to you. Thanks for that bonus demo of you like showing like your Sora competitor was sick. I think I need to play with this VibeSDK thing more, because you've shown me a few different things you built with it. I'm like, all right, now it's my turn to say I need to spend more time looking at that, because I think it's...
Well, the Sora thing was just a random side project. It might work. The way I have it hooked up now, it's using my API key, but I could set it up through like Cloudflare AI gateway so that you have that entire system where you can bill people or whatever. I could also set it up where you can add your own OpenAI key. So if people are actually interested, I'll do it. But it's, if no one's going to use it, I probably won't focus there. So if you're interested, subscribe, and then comment,
and send me flowers,
and then leave a comment. Yeah.
All right. Good to chat, mate. I'll see you next week.
You as well. Have a good one.